My name is Margie Brenner, and I work at the Wind Energy Center. Today, we're speaking with Erin Baker, Professor of Industrial Engineering and Operations Research at University of Massachusetts Amherst. Professor Baker is the faculty director of the Energy Transition Institute, which is focused on stakeholder-engaged research at the intersection of energy and technology. For more than 10 years, Professor Baker was director of the Wind Energy Fellows, a program that brings together graduate students interested in wind energy from across campus. She is also a member of the Wind Energy Center Steering Committee. Professor Baker has a PhD in Engineering, Economic Systems, and Operations Research from the Department of Management Science and Engineering at Stanford University, and a bachelor's in Mathematics from University of California, Berkeley. She combines operations research methods and economics to decision-making under uncertainty, with a focus on energy justice and publicly funded energy technology research and development portfolios in the face of climate change. Thank you for speaking with us today, Professor Baker.
Well, I was originally inspired by my time in West Africa in the early 90s. Living there, I actually saw desertification happening in the 2 years I lived there. And at the same time, the grid was not connected to the town that I lived in. And so I didn't have electricity or running water. And so that was impactful in my interest. So what I study really are the how to reduce climate change. And it's because the impacts of climate change affect the most vulnerable people around the world and affect traditionally marginalized communities here in the US. It affects them the most. And so we think about things like power outages and heat waves. At the same time, mitigating climate change can also hurt these traditionally marginalized communities if it's not done well. And so my interest and my focus is really on crafting technologically informed climate change policies that, that avoid hurting marginalized communities, but even better, I'm interested in policies that actually can lead to a more just energy system. And so that's what gets me excited. So one course that was really fun that I taught for many, many years is Introduction to Mechanical and Industrial Engineering. So this is a pretty open-ended course, and I restructured it around sustainability and renewable energy. And this allowed the students to get some kind of grounded real-world problem solving and design. We took a systems approach in order to increase the impact and the realism of what they studied. And we had them work in teams to kind of solve problems. And so one example is that UMass has a solar canopy on the parking lot of their visitor center. So I had students calculate the cost per ton of carbon avoided by that canopy. So that's kind of the technical aspect. But then in a group, they had to discuss whether it was a good investment for UMass. So this brings in kind of other critical thinking skills. So they had to think of other outcomes like it's, we're saving carbon, but it's also PR for the university, or, yes, it's saving carbon, but could we have done it in a less expensive way? And so that's the class that I really am most proud about, kind of the way that I approached it. And it was fun working with our freshman students as well. Yeah, so kind of building on that, the most fun is working with students, both graduate and undergraduate students in research, mentoring research with them. That's very, very fun. And really one of the best experiences I've had at UMass was when I was the director of this NSF funded program called an IGERT. It stands for Integrated Graduate Education Research and Training. And it was on offshore wind energy engineering, environmental impacts, and policy. And so we had engineers, we had bat and bird biologists, we had regional planners, political scientists, and they all worked together to develop a common language around offshore wind energy and to kind of, imbue their research with this broader context. It was a really great group of students, and they've gone on to work at top universities and government agencies. Really, I think of it creating this multiplier effect, taking the Wind Energy Center's knowledge and kind of spreading it throughout the industry and across the country. Yeah, so the one thing that I'm excited about right now, we're working on a project looking at how climate policy can impact local pollution, so things like NOx, SOx, particulate matter, in traditionally marginalized areas. This work is with my student, Paula Ferlinetto, who's in engineering, and then Michael Ash and Bridget Diana, who are in economics. And so we're looking at how increasing offshore wind, the amount of offshore wind in the energy system, can affect the carbon emissions and the local pollution. And we're looking at that with and without carbon capture. So carbon capture is a technology that can capture the carbon from fossil fuel plants, and then that can be like buried in the ground so that it doesn't go into the air. So the electric grid is really complex, and these complexities make this a really interesting question, like the way generators are interconnected and transmission, things are not always kind of intuitive. And so we see cases where, for instance, climate policy, so reducing the carbon emissions, actually leads to more local pollution. And we even see cases where adding offshore wind leads to more carbon emissions. So it's not the normal thing, right? This is not like it's normally going to do this, but because of the interaction, turning the plants on and off and which plants are economic, you get these interesting effects. And so the idea is to understand it and to try to design policies that can maximize the benefits to everyone. So in the long term, I would like us to see a lot of offshore wind energy, especially. I just think it's an incredibly promising technology. And so in the kind of short and medium term, what I'm really interested in is seeing or trying to get the streamlined permitting and approval processes. I just think that is super, super important. Now we've seen this, the Biden plan actually did that at the federal level. It streamlined the federal approval process. There's 7 different agencies that all are involved, and now they're all working together. And so that's really important. I'd love to see that kind of spill over and cause us to do some streamlining at the local levels. There's a number of different local kind of agencies and groups. There's state environmental agencies, coastal agencies, there are municipalities where the cables come ashore. There's stakeholders of all different kinds. And so, we want to site the plants, the offshore wind plants, in a way that works for local communities, right? We don't want to do things that are stupid. But we need to kind of move forward, right? And I think right now, a lot of things are not done efficiently. So that's what I'm probably would most like to see in the wind energy industry in the US in the next, say, 5 to 10 years. There is a European model. In the Netherlands and Denmark and in Belgium, the government does a lot more pre-development work, including site characterization, and it really reduces redundancies, reduces risks, and it helps us move forward faster. And so that's kind of my biggest goal for the US wind industry in the next 5 to 10 years as we move forward.